Suzanne Susini. I live at 83 Sunnyside Drive. This question is for Dennis Robertson. Mr. Robertson, you served for 10 years on the Industrial Development Agency as a board member. During that time, you voted in favor of every tax incentive brought before that board. Mr. Robertson, why are you now criticizing the mayor for using tax incentives for economic development in Yonkers?
Thank you, and that's actually a great question. In 1990, when I first went on the Industrial Development Agency, not many people wanted to come to Yonkers to do business. In 1992, I was the board member who uncovered and fixed the corruption that existed in the IDA at that time. When I left the IDA in the year 2000, I left with a statement saying that we no longer have to give the level of incentives that we've been giving to developers because Yonkers is now a location. There's two reasons why you would give somebody an incentive if you're a member of the IDA. A, they wouldn't come to your city unless they got the incentive, and B, they would leave your city. Well, we no longer need to beg people to come to Yonkers. We know because of Stu Leonard's and Home Depot and Costco, these are record stores. Mr. Capelli himself said to me, he says, do you want to be the person responsible for me leaving Yonkers? And I told him I'd take my chances, because guess what? He's not going anywhere. He's going to make a lot of money. He's just not going to make as much money as the mayor would like him to make. So we don't need to be giving those incentives. So I was proud of my 10 years on the IDA, and quite frankly, Phil Allen Company replaced me when I left the IDA. And I left saying that the IDA should be something of the past. We now had in place, and the mayor was part of that economic development team, where people want to come into business with Yonkers. Now it's time to negotiate good deals with the taxpayers of Yonkers. We're not expanding our tax base. The mayor went up to Albany to fight for brownfield credits for the developers against with Governor Spitzer. I'm okay with giving tax incentives, tax breaks on the brownfield, but why should they make a profit on that brownfield?
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Robertson. Thank you. The question was addressed to Mr. Robertson. Would you like to comment, Mr. Emerson?
Yes, I would. You did leave Dennis, and after the 10 years you did leave with a $92,000 personal service contract given to you by the IDA. And one of the other things we should talk about is the incentives. Those incentives, except for the IDA, all those other incentives are state and federal incentives. They're there to encourage businesses to come in. To suggest that any of this development would happen without those kinds of incentives is a fallacy. We are in competition with every other city in the state of New York and probably in New Jersey for those same companies and those same developers to bring in quality development here. And that's exactly what we're doing. I met with Pat Foy, who's head of economic development under the new governor, and Pat Foy not only told us that he thought we had a great plan, he encouraged us to continue to use those economic incentives because he recognizes that we can't do it without them. New York City provides economic incentives. Everyone does. They're there for us to use. Not to use those incentives, not to use those tax incentives that are given to us for the most part by higher levels of government, would be shortchanging the people of Yonkers because we would not get the kinds of development that we're looking for now. We would not have opportunities to have the kinds of great quality development for residential, development for offices, development for retail space and entertainment venues. Those are the kinds of things we've been trying to get in this city since I've been here, and I've been here 56 years. I've heard more plans about the redevelopment of our downtown and the redevelopment of our waterfront that fell flat on their face because we just couldn't make it profitable for the same people who wanted to develop here to do that. We are doing that now, and not by maximizing their profits.
I could tell that there was some desire on Mr. Robertson's part for rebuttal. Unfortunately, there is no room for rebuttal on the format as developed by the legal rules orders for this meeting. The candidates would have an opportunity to comment at some point. If they want to take some of their time on another answer for rebuttal or incorporate it into their closing statement, they can do that. But there is no rebuttal. The only exception, and this is the moderator's choice, if a claim is made against a candidate in a closing statement for which the candidate has no further time for rebuttal, I would entertain a request for additional 1 minute. Thank you. May we have the next question?
My name is Jeff Schlegel. I live at 170 Briggs Avenue in the city. My question is to Dennis Robinson in regards to the brownfield cleanup program. It has a lot to do with development down in Getty Square and surrounding areas in Yonkers. If this program is diminished or abolished or stopped, what is your program? What do you plan on doing to keep developers back in the city of Yonkers?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one is proposing to diminish it or stop it. Well, the only thing that the governor is proposing, which I support, is that developers should make a profit on the brownfield cleanup. They get a percentage of the total project now, and the governor is simply saying, why should they make a profit? They should have to pay for the brownfield cleanup. That's okay. They shouldn't make a profit. And Mayor, for the record, it was an $84,000 contract with the IDA. You approved it. You replaced it. And we know you wouldn't do anything improper, so it must have been a real contract.
Mr. Amiconi, would you like to comment?
Sure, check the record. I didn't approve it. And by the way, the record is there, so anyone who would like to check it can. As far as the brownfields cleanup program, there's a real problem with this. The brownfield cleanup program, all it does is provide a pad for somebody to build on. And if that pad is provided in a city where the economic incentives are still needed to build, then we still need the economic incentives. That's why the program was originally initiated by the state, to provide not only cleanup costs, but also a percentage of the development costs. What the state finally realized was that this, in order to clean up the many contaminated acres in the state of New York, especially in the old industrial cities, it couldn't be done with just a rod. It had to be done with an incentive. So what they did was they provided an economic incentive tool that has as its byproduct the cleanup of these contaminated soils, because by offering these incentives, developers who came in and wanted to build these projects were able to do so only after they cleaned to a much higher standard than even would have been required under the Environmental Bond Act. So we're getting much cleaner soils than we would have gotten previously, and we're also getting great projects in them. That's why the incentive program was put in there as part of the cleanup. It is working. It has worked extremely well in the city of Yonkers and in other places that have used it. We plan on continuing to do so.
Before we take the next question, the last two questions have been addressed to Mr. Robertson. Do you have a question for both of the candidates or for Mr. Amiconi by any chance? No. That's fine. Okay. Any other questions?
Ready?
Pardon me?
Ready?
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Warren Murphy. I live at 71 Algonquin Road, Yonkers. My question is to Dennis Robertson. The question being, during this whole Ridge Hill, I would call it an escapade, it came down at some point where the county voted against it. Okay. Subsequent to that, it became a supermajority ruling in the city of Yonkers. There was a meeting, a real estate committee meeting, and illegally there was a vote taken by the city council because there was no public hearings up to this point.
Excuse me, do you have a question?
Yeah, my question leading up to it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know, at this meeting, the city council, some members of the city council were screaming about how illegal it was, the proceeding was. You voted for the change in the majority from 5 to 4 votes.
May I have your question,
The
please?
question is, why did you go along with that, changing it from 5 to 4 votes, please?
Thank you, Warren, for that question. My first 2 years on the city council, 2.5, quite frankly, was consumed primarily with the Ridge Hill. I think we learned a lot from the Ridge Hill debacle. I don't know what you refer to it as, but those meetings. And there was a lot of shouting going on, and that was unfortunate, because if we could have gotten past the shouting and screaming, it was a very emotional issue, we probably would have come up with a much better plan. Relative to your question, Warren, we are the only city, the entire county of Westchester, and quite frankly, I don't think the mayor even disagrees with my position on this, that requires a supermajority when the county planning board has to review a project. That's why I voted for it. It simply wasn't fair for the people of Yonkers. As you know, it turned out we lost it in court, and we came back and we got a 5-2 vote on the project. But we are the only city in the entire county of Westchester that has that rule, and it's something that probably should be changed.
Thank you.